So here we have a Jetski that we had to remove the decals on it because it was purchased out of state. So now what we have to do is we have to put a new set of decals on that were assigned by our Department of Motor Vehicles in the state of Connecticut. So we're going to use the STEPCRAFT CNC, and we are going to design and cut out a new set of decals to go right here that we will use the drag knife to complete. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so now that we know we need to get our numbers put on the Jetski, we need to find out what the requirements are. Now, state of Connecticut happens to have a document that outlines where the decals are supposed to go, and gives all kinds of specs and information on that. So what we're concerned about here is right here. The registration number must be displayed as follows. The number must be painted applied as a decal. We plan on using vinyl decals. Number must be read from left to right on both sides of the bow. Number must be at least 3-inch high block letters. So that's an important thing that we're going to need to know. It must contrast with its background. Since the hull is white, we're going to use black vinyl, and the letters must be separated by a space. So for example, right here it shows there's a space between the letters, the numbers, and the letters again. So now in the case of a Jetski, they actually have a little information thing here so you can see how it's got to be laid out, and they're basically saying you should have the letters followed by a 2-inch space, the numbers, 2-inch space, and then another 2-inch space. So this is important for us to know so we could set up this job. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into VCarve Pro. Now again, you could use Cut 2D. There's nothing in here that I need the features of Pro. It just happens to be what I have on this computer. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to create a new file, and we are going to set our job size. We know the letters are going to be 3 inches tall, and because the machine's y-axis is longer than the x-axis, we're going to actually make this job vertical on the screen. So we could use 9 inches as a width. We're not going to use all that space, but it's just a comfortable width to use on the screen. And we're going to set our height to 24 inches. Now, the material thickness really doesn't matter in this case because we're cutting vinyl and we're using a drag knife, so we're not going down any specific depth to cut all the way through. The depth of cut is actually controlled by a dial on the blade itself on the drag knife. So we're going to leave this at 1/8 of an inch, and that's fine. We're going to set our XY datum to the lower left corner. If I set it to the center, you'll see this red square moves to the center, but because I want to try to minimize scrap on my vinyl sheet, I'm going to use the lower left corner for that. We're going to work in inches, and these two settings here are relevant. We're going to click OK. Now, because the spec said that we had to use the letter followed by space, and then with a space of 2 inches here, what I want to do is actually create this number in 3 pieces. So the first thing we're going to do is, we know the first 2 letters are CT. We're going to choose the font Arial because it's a blocky letter like they're looking for, but I am going to bold it so it's a little thicker, easier to read. We're going to set the text height to 3 inches, which is their minimum requirement for the letter height. I'm going to click Apply. So now I see I've got CT on my screen here. I'm going to click somewhere outside of the CT so this turns black. Now I'm going to go in, I'm going to type in the numbers, which is 8136. And again, Arial bold 3 inches. I'm going to click Apply. There's my 8136. So I'm going to, one last time, I'm going to click outside of that number so it turns black. If I don't do that and I leave it so that it's purple, then when I type something else in here, it's going to actually change this. So I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to click outside of it. And then the last letters are BJ. And again, bold 3 inches. And there we have it. So there's the 3 pieces of this registration number. Now, because I know I want them to be spaced 2 inches apart, a very simple way to do that is just to create a rectangle that's or square that's 2 inches by 2 inches, and I'm going to create that, and it puts it here on the screen. So now I've got all the components I need. I'm going to start to assemble this on the screen. So what I'm going to do is click the Move, Scale, Rotate selection tool, and I'm going to start with the CT, and I'm just going to move it over here. Then I'm going to take my spacer and I'm just going to put it right on the end of the T like that. So I know that's a 2-inch space. I'm going to come over and grab the numbers, and I'm going to move it over so that the edge of the 8 hits the square. Okay, and then I'm going to take the square and I'm going to move it to the other side, to the end of the 6. And I'm going to take the letters here and I'm going to move those over so that they're roughly at the edge of the square. Now, it doesn't need to be perfect. It's just this is a 2-inch reference point. Now that I've got them spaced out the way I want, I'm going to take this square and I'm just going to kind of move it off to the side because I don't need it. And what I do need to do now is I need to make sure all these letters are aligned. Okay, so I'm just going to basically highlight everything so it all turns purple. Going to go over here to the Align Selected Objects tool, and I'm going to align to the selection. So I want to center everything vertically. So if I click this button, everything makes a slight adjustment, and now they're all, in a perfect line. So I'm going to click Close. The other thing I want to do is I want to avoid accidentally selecting just one part of this when I'm repositioning it. So I'm going to right click on my mouse and I am going to group all the objects together. So now what I need to do is I need to rotate this so it's vertical on my work area. So I'm going to go to the Move, Scale, Rotate again, and you've got these hollow squares, which are actually resize handles. So if you were to click that, you can change the width or height of the letters. I'm concerned about the 4 solid squares, and when I put my mouse over it, they turn into a circle with an arrow. And that's going to let me rotate this vertically. So I'm going to hold the Shift key to snap it vertical. And you'll notice when you hold the Shift key, it kind of snaps to various angles throughout until you get it vertical, and then just let go. Now I'm going to use the Select tool, and I'm just going to move this over onto my vinyl. And I don't want to go super close to the edge in case when I lay this sheet out it's not perfectly parallel to the y-axis. You don't want the letters to kind of run off. So I usually give myself a little bit, like 1/4 inch or so on the edge. Now what I need to do is I need to duplicate this because I need one for each side. So I'm using a Mac with parallels right now, and I would hit Command C to copy and Command V to paste. If you're using a Windows computer, you'd click Control C and Control V, or you can simply right click and this menu comes up and you just select copy, and then you go in the white space here and right click and click paste. Now it's going to paste it right over the original, so it almost looks like nothing happened. But if you were to go ahead, I'm going to hold the Shift key down and I'm going to move my arrow over it, and by holding the Shift key it locks it in the same plane as the current letters. So if I just hold my mouse button down and the Shift key and I drag it over, you'll see I have a duplicate there, and that's it. So now these letters are ready to make a toolpath. So I'm going to highlight all the letters, and then I'm going to go over here to the Toolpath tab and I'm going to click the Pin button. Now I'm going to go over to Profile because we're going to cut a profile toolpath. Basically all we want to do is have a drag knife go along the lines, right on the line. We don't want to go inside or outside, so it's just a simple profile toolpath. So we're going to click on that. Now remember, we set our material thickness to 1/8 of an inch, so we're going to actually set our cut depth to 1/8 of an inch. Again, it's irrelevant, but what's going to happen is the tip of the drag knife is spring loaded, so we want to have a little pressure on it. So what's going to happen is we're going to 0 the Z with the blade touching the top of the vinyl. But when you start the job, the Z is going to actually move down 1/8 of an inch, which is going to compress that spring so that you have some pressure going against the vinyl as you're cutting. So we're going to set that to 1/8 of an inch. And what I did here was I basically copied a tool, an end mill, and I called it a STEPCRAFT drag knife. And I set a diameter on this. What I want to do for the diameter, the blade is really small. It's almost immeasurable by most people as far as the tip of the blade, but I'm going to set this to 0.05 for a diameter. And the reason I'm doing that is just so that when I do a preview in Vectric, you could see it. I tried using a number that was really, really small, like 3 or 4 thousandths, and you couldn't see it show up on the preview. So I'm just going to leave it as a diameter of 0.05. Pass depth is going to be equal to the cut depth that I set here. And the reason for that is if I set the cut depth to 0.25, but the pass depth is only 1/8 of an inch, then you're going to see over here when you calculate that it's going to make 2 passes, and it's a drag knife toolpath. You don't need to make more than 1 pass. So we just want to make sure those match. I'm going to, the RPM is irrelevant because we're not using a spindle. I've set my feed rate to 20 millimeters a second. It's not too aggressive, but it's not too slow either. These letters are not super critical. There's not a lot of detail in them, so we could probably even go to 30 or 40 millimeters a second. 50 millimeters a second is the maximum speed of the STEPCRAFT 2 series machines. So we're just going to leave it at 20 because it's pretty comfortable. The plunge rate is the rate to which the drag knife will actually enter the vinyl. Again, that's almost irrelevant. I've got it set to 10 millimeters a second, which is fine. That's something you are more concerned about when you're running with end mills. Now I'm going to click OK. So you can see here I've got 1 pass, which is what I want. I'm going to cut on the line because that's what we're doing here. We're cutting the letters out on the line. If we were using an end mill, then we might want to go outside or inside the line depending on what we're doing. The direction, it doesn't matter because the blade actually pivots on a bearing inside the drag knife, so it's going to rotate to follow the path that it's going, so it's not going to make a difference. There is no last pass. There's no tabs, leads, ramps. Basically, that's the end of it. Now all we want to do is we want to calculate this toolpath. I could rename it to drag knife. It's the only toolpath we're going to have, so I don't really need to do that. But now I can see it here. I've changed the material to a blue plastic just to have a solid color so I can see what's going on. You can see the letters are outlined here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to preview all toolpath, and you can see that they've cut through. Now if I double click on the waste area, it's going to disappear, leaving me with just the numbers. So I can do that with the holes in the 8 and the 6 and also the holes in the B, and you'll see that I'm left with my registration number with a 2-inch space between the letters, and I can now save this toolpath and bring it over to the STEPCRAFT CNC and cut out my letters. So what we're going to do is we're going to close this, we're going to select the drag knife toolpath and then select this save toolpath icon. Now we're going to output using a post processor, STEPCRAFT UCCNC ARCS millimeters. Now there's a second one in here which is an ATC ARCS, which is a automatic tool changer. Now because we're not using a spindle or the tool changer, even if you have a tool changer, I recommend you use the ARCS, because what you don't want to do is have the machine think that there's a tool in there and try to put it back when the drag knife is actually mounted on the machine. So by using the non-ATC version, it's going to take the G-code out, which calls for tool changes. Now, if you don't have a STEPCRAFT post processor in your list, then what you want to do is you want to look for a Mach 2/3 right here, Mach 2/3 ARCS millimeters, and they also have an ATC version, so you'll want to use the ARCS. Depending on the version and whether you've updated your version of VCarve programs, you may or may not have the STEPCRAFT one in there. So that's it. And then we're going to save the toolpath to a file. I'm going to call it, let's see, reg numbers, and I'm going to click save. So now we can bring this file over, install the vinyl, put the drag knife on, and cut this out on the STEPCRAFT. Okay, so now that I've got my vinyl stuck down to the machine, I'm using some 2-inch wide masking tape to hold it around all the way around the perimeter so that it keeps it from moving. I've got my drag knife in, I've got my blade height set so that I know I'm going to cut through the vinyl and not all the way through the paper. I've zeroed the job to the lower left corner like I set up the job in VCarve, and now we're ready to start cutting some letters. Okay, so now that the letters have been cut, I move the gantry back out of the way. I'm going to take a small knife and I am basically going to start the process of weeding out the waste material like that. And I'm going to go ahead and do that for this whole sheet, and then we'll be back in a minute and I'll show you how we apply vinyl so that we can easily transfer the letters to the Jetski using masking tape. Okay, so now you can see everything has been weeded out, so all I'm left with are the letters. I'm going to make this easy to transfer to the Jetski, I'm going to use 2 pieces of masking tape over the letters. So I'll show you. We're going to basically take masking tape and we're going to apply it right over these letters here, and then we're going to take another piece and we are going to put it overlap the first piece, but make sure that the second piece covers all of the letters like this. So now what's going to happen when I go to transfer this, I'm going to pull down like this and you'll see that the letters are now going to stick to the masking tape, and then I can place them on the Jetski and then use my hand to rub them down, and then when I peel the masking tape off, the letters will have stuck to the Jetski. So I'm going to do these letters now. Now I'm cutting the tape obviously longer than the letters than I need to have them, but that's okay. I'm going to trim it off after with a knife. So I want to again overlap them like that, and you're going to want to push down pretty hard because you want to make sure that the tape is actually grabbing onto the letter and the letters don't stay stuck to the paper underneath it. And when you peel these off after, it's important, peel off at a sharp angle. In other words, don't come up like this. You want to peel back, and you'll see the letters will naturally just stick to the masking tape, which is what we want. So now I will take my knife and I'm basically just going to trim the excess masking tape off, being sure not to cut the letters. That's it. Now I'll take this off the machine and we'll go out to the Jetski, we'll clean the hull, we will figure out how we're going to align these so that they're even on both sides, and we'll transfer them on. Now that the letters are adhered to the hull, what we're going to do is use our hand to just kind of securely press them into the hull to make sure that they're going to stick well. Then we're going to peel the corner back of the masking tape to reveal the letters now that are on the hull, and they won't stay stuck to the masking themselves. We're going to continue to peel it off and just be careful that it doesn't rip off the last letter. Use your finger if you need to push it down. And that is it. That's how you put registration numbers on a Jetski or on a boat using a STEPCRAFT CNC and a drag knife.